Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Candid show. This episode is hosted by myself, Sriram, and Krishna. So, in this episode, we are going to talk about a very big and up and coming technology which is going to rock the world, which is artificial intelligence. So, I would like to dive straight into the topic by giving a brief introduction or like a brief description about what AI actually is. So, artificial intelligence is a wide ranging branch of a computer sciences which is basically related with building smart machines capable of performing tasks which any human can do. So to judge as AI or basically determine the strength of an AI, I think we have five brief components which kind of give AI its own characteristics. So the five are learning, reasoning, problem solving, perception, and language. So I'd like to give a brief description about each one of these. So learning, there are different types of learning for an AI, and the most common type of learning is learning by trial and error. And this method is applicable to any kind of an AI, be it fundamental or be it a complex one. But the problem with this kind of is probably that the generalization aspect, where if the AI kind of learns to in one kind of an aspect, so when you throw it into do some other kind of a task, it kind of struggles there. So that's the main problem with the learning aspect of this. So moving on to reasoning, we have two types of reasoning. There's deductive and inductive reasoning. So inductive reasoning is basically applied in sciences, where we collect data and we perform experiments and we develop certain fundamental models and we go about predicting future behaviors. So that is the inductive reasoning. So deductive reasoning is basically involved in mathematics and logic, where we build up elaborate structures, or rather give a lot of proofs and theorems based on certain fundamental basics, idioms or ideas, etc. And another problem which this reasoning aspect of AI faces is that there is relevancy. So to apply it in any kind of a different kind of an atmosphere which we have not been trained to is actually a very big problem which is faced in the reasoning aspect of AI. So moving on to problem solving. So problem solving in AI particularly is basically searching through or systematically analyzing the list of available solutions to a given problem and taking out the best possible solution. So that is what problem solving means in terms of AI. So there's going to be two types of problem solving methods, or there's going to be two methods especially. One is a special purpose method, which is basically tailor made for a special kind of situation, and there's a general purpose method which can be basically used for a wide variety of problems. So an example of this, I think, is finding the winning move of a chess game. So for example, that is basically a special purpose method, where basically the AI is kind of trained to find the best possible move out of all the possible combinations in a chess game. So moving on to perception. So perception is basically the AI kind of scanning the environment and kind of trying to identify certain objects placed in different angles or maybe in different positions as well. So a very smart or a very good AI is basically characterized to able to be identifying any kind of an object placed any kind of an angle, and that is another problem or another challenge which the perception part of AI kind of faces. And last but not the least, the language is basically a system of signs, so having basically a convention, because I think languages need not always be about communication or actually speaking out stuff, because languages can also resemble signs, just like the traffic signals which you have, because when we see some kind of a traffic sign, it instantly reminds us that this corresponds to that particular sign. So language need not always be about communication, it can also be about signs. So yeah, that is probably the brief five components of AI described. Yeah.
So yeah, to give us a short note on history of AI, early researchers developed algorithms that imitated step-by-step reasoning that humans used, and they also used the technique where they calculated the human ability to solve puzzles or logical deductions. So this proved to be insufficient as the lack of data in the 1990s, early 1980s and 90s. So the basic research of the AI includes objects, properties, categories, and relations between objects, situations, events, state and time, cause and effects, where cause and effects are very important for an AI to judge. So natural language processing, as Shriram told, is also a main aspect of AI.
Yeah.
So speaking about the main part of AI, coming to the main part, perception is the most important part and most challenging of the advanced AI in the generation. So speaking about perception, the perception is the ability of a machine to sense the objects using cameras and sensors, using spectrum or infrared rays, or like microphones, wireless signals, active sonar and radar, and tactical sensors. So using these, the machines used to capture the surroundings, and judge it. So applications of it include speech recognition, facial recognition, and object recognition. So the computer vision is the ability to analyze visual input. For example, if an object has a common image and it is programmed into the computer, if you place the same object at a distance from the computer, where the computer is given sensors and cameras, the ability of it to sense the object and identify the common diagram, common image is called the perception or the computer vision. So these are the major types of AI where it plays a very important role in the upcoming generation. So next, going on into the applications of AI, we have got that the application of AI includes usage of autonomous vehicles such as drones and self-driving cars, where self-driving cars is a very elaborate topic, and it is very vast that we can make a separate episode for it. So it is also used in AI is also used in medical diagnosis, art creation, then proving mathematical theorems, playing games. So in games, if you see, the computer player or the default player is managed by the AI, and the search engines such as Google is also an important aspect of AI, and online assistants such as Siri, and image recognition in photographs, as previously told, in perception, and spam filtering, predicting flight delays. So these are the most important parts where the AI is used. And to move on into the daily usage of AI in our everyday life, self-driving cars as told, and parking vehicles. So like self-driving cars where they take you to the wanted destination, and they park themselves. So the ability of an AI to judge the traffic and the surroundings, and take you to the estimated destination is important aspect of AI in the self-driving cars. And digital assistants such as the voice assistants such as Google Assistant, Siri, Alexa. So you can see these are the main examples of digital or voice assistants. So next is the vehicle recognition identification. So next, the most important, rather the most important part of AI is robots, where AI is heavily used in robots, and the if you see, industrial robots are widely used in the modern factories, where if you see, the industrial robots are the advanced type of robots where they have these arms, and developed and more advanced parts in the robot, and are programmed to do industrial work. And such robots aren't kept in a separate place, where they are actually taken to the original industry and given the experience, and they test it whether it does the job efficiently, and so that the robot does it perfectly. And in spite of the presence of friction and gear slippage in the robot, in the advanced robot, which is naturally processed by it, but these are the important parts where the robots kind of experience the work in the industries. And robotics is a subject, if you see, which completely depends on AI, and its process is in executing a program. So this is the main part of robots, and it also helps in transportation, medical diagnosis, and AI is also used in games. So these are the basic importance and the significance of AI. So yeah.
Yeah, Krishna, as you've told a lot of applications, or rather very important details about AI. So I think I'd rather move on to the actual power, or rather the potential of AI in the future, because I think I'd like to start off with what Bill Gates has told, that artificial intelligence is so incredible that it is going to change our society in some very deep ways. And I think I agree with him, because I think AI is so integrated into our lives. For example, Siri in our phones and Amazon Alexa, all of these basically use AI to cooperate and coordinate all of the tasks or questions which you ask them. and the Facebook feeds is basically contains AI, or the Netflix recommendations also. So most of the things which we kind of use every day, every single day in our life, is basically driven by AI. And the Facebook AI especially is one of the most strongest AIs, because they have such a good tracking mechanism, because they keep track of all the things which you have recently been doing, and they suggest all of it on the right side of the bar, which you would have noticed, I think. So one of the most strongest AI is owned by Facebook. And Jeff Bezos also has said that if AI comes more and more, or rather if AI is integrated more and more into the mainstream society, our civilization, or rather the our standard of living, is going to definitely go up, and also the quality of work is also going to increase significantly, and higher fraction of people also are going to have callings and careers and in this field especially. Because I think people have kind of the wrong notion that AI is going to replace humans, but I think that is never going to happen, because humans and AI are something which are going to have a symbiotic relationship, where they basically draw energy upon each other, where they need to have each other to basically coexist. And also the most biggest advantage or biggest power of AI is that after every single iteration it actually gets better. And this is just a very phenomenal advantage of AI, because humans generally cannot achieve perfection in any kind of job they do, because that is just not in them. They cannot be perfect just like machines. So that's where the machines have this biggest advantage, where after every single try they are just going to keep getting better and better. So that is a very big power of AI especially. So talking about the potential, or rather the future possibilities, so I think the very big problem right now, or the biggest factor which we have to kind of overcome to bring AI more into our mainstream world, is I think the interoperability, or the lack of interoperability in AI. So to put it in simple words, so some of these companies which have their own AI technologies basically are stuck to serve some kind of a company or their industry, or some kind of a specific use. So for example, Facebook has this very strong AI, so they basically use that particular AI just to manipulate, or rather control their Facebook feeds or various other factors, just for their own profit, or rather their own industrial use. So I think to bring AI more into the mainstream, I think some of these AI, especially some of these big companies, I think should start to make some of their software open sources, or at least give part of their code of AI at least to the general public, because there are certain researchers and developers which kind of are struggling to get their hands on some kind of AI, or some kind of basic AI also. So I think if some of these very big companies, or rather some of these conglomerates rather, give up some of their, at least not the entire code, at least a few part of their coding, at least by which the researchers could kind of understand how the coding process works, that could be very useful. Because as of right now we don't have much of a open source software, especially for the AI. So I think that is one of the most biggest problems which we have to, or rather the biggest kind of change which we also have to do, is that bring more and more open sourcing software, especially into the open source, such that some of these developers also can benefit from it. So I think, Krishna, moving on to the very important question concerning this topic, I think it is very important to talk about, or rather ask a question to anybody, is that is AI a threat to humans, or rather will AI take over the humans? So what do you think about that?
So yeah, if you see danger due to AI can be majorly seen as two ways. Where the first way is about the autonomous weapons used in the war, where which automatically is programmed to kill the enemy. So this can be this device, this weapons in the wrong man's hand could lead to many casualties, and moreover this can lead to a AI war in the future if this continues.
Yeah.
So like this can be very devastating and very harmful to the humankind and human species, and this can be the rise of AI in the future in a very negative way. So this can be one possible way. And so if you see, these weapons can't be turned off easily like a robot or a normal AI machine. So these are highly programmed and very large machines which take time to turn off. So this could lead to a huge casualty in the war. So the if something goes wrong, the AI can't respond to the current situation, where it can take a wrong decision and kill the self teammates.
Yeah.
So this can also happen, and this may lead to a very big war and this could also lead to the World War III. So and usage of it must be in a very proper way. And the second most danger, if you see, if the doctors or their assistants are replaced with robots in the surgical time, where the robots are to be done to do the operations, where they don't there is no surety that the robot may do the surgery in an efficient way.
Yeah.
So as we all know that the most important or the most critical part of the medical field is the operation or the surgeries. So in such time where the robots are replaced, if there is an emergency situation or there is a change in the process of the operation, the robot doesn't know how to respond to the current situation, and it may also lead to a casualty due to the malfunction of the AI machine, that is the robot. So these are the main two most dangers of AI. And Shiram, I want to ask you that would AI take over the world in the near future?
So, Krishna, I think if we are going to talk about the big picture, I think we have to start diving into some certain important facts which we have. I think so. There is a general notion which people have that AI, especially, is taking over a lot of jobs and it is causing serious unemployment issues because it is already predicted that over the next 15 to 20 years there will be around at least 70% of the jobs are basically going to be automated, and this is basically bad news. I think for some of the people who kind of are heavily dependent on jobs for their survival. So I think it's time to look at it from a different perspective, because I think we as humans, I think are basically scared of AI because we just can't predict it, because AI is so random, because I think it is something which we never understood and which we can't understand, at least I think probably for the next 15 to 20 years, because I think we simply can't comprehend the level up to which the AI is basically thinking, because it is basically a super intelligent machine. So we cannot comprehend what it is going to do in the next 15 to 20 years. I think that is why people are scared of AI, and that is why people kind of assume AI is going to destroy the world. And I think the baseline or the most important conclusion which you can take out of this, I think, is we don't know what we don't know. So put it into simple words, we are basically scared of something about which we have no idea actually what it is. So our only problem with AI is that it is just very random, it is very chaotic. So that is why we kind of fear AI, and it is going to take over the world. That is why we have such assumptions, I think. And also Albert Einstein, when he formulated his quantum theory, actually had some of the variables in it, or some of the important variables especially in that equation, where actually he was not able to figure out the answer to it. And he also told that some of these hidden variables are going to be discovered in the future, and they may also give us few insights on certain future events also. So I think we can start to think that these AI, or especially these super advanced machines, could actually figure out some of these unknown variables, and they could actually push us to a point where we've never would have accepted, like in the sense we would not even have comprehended that we can actually push to that extent. So that is where AI is kind of has this very strong point, because it can think up to probably, and we can't even have any kind of limit up to which what AI can think. So I think that is one of the most biggest advantages, especially with AI, is that its unpredictability is actually advantage as well as a disadvantage also. So I think I'll take you all to 2030. So let's assume we are all in 2030 and we have AI in machine language combined. We can actually eliminate global poverty, and we are basically reducing all of the people from malnourishment. We are reducing diseases. Our healthcare system is extremely good, and our education is top notch. And let's assume another possibility where we've created weapons of mass destructions, and there is no human on the planet, and there is only robots. So I think for both of these things to happen, there is an equal probability. There is 50% chance to happen. So we cannot say for certain which is going to happen. We could say that there could be a positive outcome to this, or there could be a negative outcome to this. So I think the important question which you're supposed to ask is how are we going to tolerate this, or what will we actually do, or what are we going to choose to do, rather than thinking that it is going to actually be harmful for us or going to take over us. I think the important course of action, or the important course of decision which we have to take, I think, is what will we choose to do, because I think at the end of the day we cannot actually predict anything, and that is the biggest problem with us, and that's where the machines are handy or have that advantage. So I think from now onwards we should at least start asking questions, or at least take the notions out of our heads that AI is going to be destructive or taking over the world and stuff. And I think it is just going to be something which we have to decide at that point, or also maybe make a decision when we arrive on 2030, or basically any other period where something like this happens. So yeah, so that is where we end our podcast today, guys. Thank you so much for listening to us. If you have any kind of recommendations or suggestions, please leave it in the comment sections below, and thank you so much for listening to us. Thank you all.
Thank you.